Welcome to episode 44 of the Landlady Boss podcast. I'm here with my sister and co-host Rachel. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Marie. I'm doing so well. How are you doing?
We had spring break last week, and so my family and I, we went to the Yucatan and did some cenotes and saw some ruins and ate a lot of tacos, street tacos. So, it was so fun, delicious. We had a great time. How are you doing?
It's one of my favorite places in the world. I love the Yucatan. Yeah.
It is wonderful.
I'm so
There's
glad
just
you had
so
fun.
much to do. It's just a fun place. I am not a big Cancun person, so we get out of Cancun and then explore. And I just love it because there's little hidden cenotes like everywhere you go, and you're like, what's down this road? Oh, another little cenote, or just like
I love
ruins
that.
that you can be in the jungle. It's just very natural and raw, and I do love that. So
Me
very
too.
fun
I love
time.
that. Oh,
But I
wonderful.
had a little surprise when I got home because I put my mail on hold and I got the mail delivered today and they needed a signature and all these things. I'm like, oh, this is weird. And I'm looking. Well, I'm getting sued. Here's the big
No,
news.
no,
Yes,
no.
I'm getting sued by a tenant. How many times are we threatened by tenants? Like, I'm going to sue you, or I'm going to get an attorney, or whatever. Disgruntled
Yeah,
people. It happens. But
yeah.
this one actually is suing me. I'm going to court, I guess, April 21st to hear his claims against me.
What is the suit for? How much? How much is the damage?
Well, it's about his security deposit. This is what the
Ah,
dispute is. He moved out in the end of January, and we did the checkout form, the damage inspection form, which is why we
yes.
say do this and document each thing. And you can
Hmm.
go to our website, landladyboss.com, and get your free copy. Do that because this is really important because now I'm going to have documentation when I go before the judge. But we walked through the apartment, we made notes of some things that needed cleaned, and then there were some damage to the paint on the walls, like scuffs and marks and things like that. So nothing crazy, but just we made a note of it. Some walls need repainted. He signed it and returned the keys. And when we went within 45 days, when we returned the itemized deposit statement to him,
Hmm.
he was very upset. He was mad because we had taken out about $225 for a cleaning fee, which you need to understand this apartment, the tub was so grimy and gross.
Yeah.
Like you could see, which I have pictures. It's just gross. You could not re-rent it in this condition. And the oven was filthy. The fridge was gross. He had clean. He's like,
Oh,
I left it clean. Well, his clean, my
mm,
clean, different cleans. But
right.
so we had to have it cleaned, and then we
Hmm.
also had to have parts of the apartment repainted, which we didn't even charge him the full amount and just a portion of it. So it came out to, $225 or something like that. So he did receive the rest of his deposit, which was, $325. He received that, and then we made notes of where we had spent the rest of his damage deposit, and he just was very upset. And I tried to remind him, why these things were, showed him in the lease, like, it's
Hmm.
supposed to be brought to the original condition that it was when he moved in, and these were the things we had to do, and we only charged a portion, but that wasn't good
Hmm.
enough. He said, I'm going to be talking to an attorney. I'm, over $225. And I was like, okay, well, I'm really sorry to hear that. So apparently he's representing himself, so he didn't talk to an attorney, but he is taking me to court, small
Right.
claims court. And so now I will need to go and present the damage inspection form that he signed off on, a copy of the lease, where it
Hmm.
states that he needs to return it to original condition.
Right.
Luckily we have all these things, and this is why we say have these documents, have proof, have the paper trail, all this stuff. And we have pictures that we took. It's just a pain, to
It
have to
is a
go do
pain.
it. And then there's, $107 court fee that if he wins, then I need to pay. But I'm kind of like, well, if I win, what do I get? Like, I had to do all this time.
So much time. No,
Not
it's
even
true.
suffering over a stupid $225, which, part of me is like, just take it and go. I don't even care. It's not worth my time. But there is a point to
Yeah,
it. I do not condone bad
there's a
behavior, and
point.
I do not want to, give into him when it's not justifiable. Like this
Right.
is standard operating procedure. This is not anything crazy. We were trying to be very fair with
Yeah.
him, and
I found I found that when people are renting, they often have never been homeowners, and so they have no idea that one can of paint is $49. And the paintbrushes. I mean, just the supplies to go and buy the supplies for that scuff is going to cost you
Yeah.
so much money. And then to get a painter. I've had this over and over where they just don't have any idea of the actual cost for things. So someone will call and they'll say, okay, my kid flushed a toy down the toilet, and they say, can you fix it? And so I say, yes, but you're going to need to pay the bill. Okay. And it's going to at least be $85 to $115. And
Just
they go,
to get someone
what?
there. And then they're going to have to, if they have to
right.
remove the toilet, but I mean, it's not a quick little fix like people think.
But painters and plumbers are expensive, and electricians are expensive. And if you've never owned your home, you look at that and you go, $250. Wow, to clean a tub? I mean, you could pay $10 to somebody. And they didn't, and that's the point.
I know.
But somebody has to pay these bills, and it's them because they're the ones that did the damage. But I think it's just really usually the confusion between knowing how much something costs and feeling taken advantage of. But it's just they don't have any idea. Sometimes what I do is I'll put the entire bill on their account, and then I'll put a credit back saying, we only did a portion of it, so, but at least they can see that it was a $600 paint job. And then I only charged them $200, and so when they see those prices, they're shocked. It's just crazy.
Well, and to hear, we charged him $90 for the painting, his portion of the painting that we considered to charge him, which is not even, as you know, it was way more than that. Yeah. But you can't just go and touch up the marks, right? Like you have to paint the whole wall. And so, I even told him we only charged you a fraction of what it cost. Right. We're not trying to gouge you here or do anything dishonest, but he just, you can't please everyone. Yeah. So that's my story of the week. I'm getting sued. Oh, well.
I'm so sorry. It's just kind of scary. You try to do everything right, and it's like, oh, what? What? But I mean, at the end of the day, that is how the system works, so that they can have their day in court. But it does waste a lot of time if you did everything correctly. So, but anyway, which brings us to a property manager, and why should we fire one if they're not good?
Right. That's what we want to talk about this week. Bad property managers, which I hate to say it, but usually there's more in that category than in the good property managers. Hence, many of us manage our own properties. And I will say at some point in your real estate investing journey, it's very likely that you will manage your own properties, whether it's, just you only have one or two, so there's not really a reason to get a full-time one. Maybe there's not a good one in your area. Maybe you've had one and you're so fed up with them that you said, I'll just do this myself. At some point, I feel like every property manager has to dip their toes into the self-managing world. And so I wanted to talk this week about why we should fire our property managers. And I know that sounds harsh. And if you manage your property and other people's properties and you do a fabulous job, keep it up. We need good property managers. But as most of us can relate to, so often they do a poor job. They're just not taking care of your property like you think they should, or their fees are so high, or, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons why you should fire them and self-manage. And if that scares you, if you think, why would I do that? Or I don't even know how, or I've been wanting to because I'm fed up with my property manager, but it's a little scary thinking about doing it on your own. We're also here for you with that too. We are having a 6-week intensive training that is coming up in less than 3 weeks. This is super exciting. We are going to be going through the beginning to end on how to manage your properties. All the information that we have, we will give it to you. There will be live Q&As. You'll have access to all of our courses. So head over to our website and check all that out, and I'll put the link to register in the show notes. But if this is something that has been weighing on your mind and you've been thinking, I can do a much better job than this property manager is doing, you're right. So this week, Rachel, we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons to fire them. And I want to start with the first one, which is just lack of attention to your property. No one is going to manage your property as well as you are. No one's going to be looking at the details and paying as much attention to all the aesthetic needs or the maintenance needs, because they are not as heavily invested in your investment as you are, of course. They may care about you. They may try their best, but at the end of the day, it is your investment and you're the one that is going to care the most about it.
It's true. Sometimes that's when I actually decided to property manage, was when I had built a property and I looked around and I could not get somebody that would maintain it the way I wanted it maintained. So that's when I started property managing. The second one would be high fees. Yeah, right. So think about the fees that you pay a property manager, and if they're amazing and do an incredible job, and you have all the freedom in the world because you have a property manager, then they earn their fee. But if you want to property manage, think about what you could do with the fees, the monthly fees and other charges eat into your cash flow. I mean, they're another expense item, right? And so if you were the property manager, you could have that amount to buy a porch swing and put it up, or like, do something, go on a vacation, because now that's your money that you have as a profit instead of as an expense. So anyway, that's one thought about the high fees.
Well, and a lot of people, when they are considering this, they think, okay, well, my time's worth something, and it absolutely is worth something. But like you're saying, no, with some really great systems in place and some automation, it's not rocket science. Like, you can do this and you can also have freedom and flexibility, but you at the end of the month get to keep that money, which is nice. You don't see 10, 12% going out the window, and you're able to keep all that extra cash that, you could either put back into your property to improve it, make some great improvements, increasing the value of your investment, or like you said, maybe it can improve your lifestyle choices or decisions or comfort, so that we're talking about serious money. It really does add up. If you have an amazing one and they are doing an excellent job, yes, they earn that money, and that is worth it for that time and flexibility and your freedom. But if they're not doing a good job, then stop sending your money out the door when you could be having that money to enjoy, and systemizing things so that you still have your flexibility and freedom. So I do know, when I first started doing rental properties were in my hometown, I had a run-in with another property manager. And because I was kind of looking around, and it didn't seem like there were a lot of options in my town, but I had to talk to the owner of a property that was next to my rental that I had bought. And so, I was trying to get a hold of the owner, and the owner's like, I have a property manager to handle this. I don't want to talk to you. Like, here's his number. Okay, great. So then I talked to his property manager, and oh my gosh, it was like pulling teeth to get any communication, anything done. I mean, he was just slow. He would not respond. It was just a really difficult, horrible experience. And I mean, I was at the beginning of my investing journey, but I remember saying, like, he will never manage anything that I own, because my experience with him was so bad. And what an awful networking experience for him, because if he had been really responsive and communicative, and years down the road, when I have so many more units, I could have been knocking on his door saying, hey, help me. And I know that there's not a lot of options, because I frequently get asked to manage other people's properties, and I have said no. It's I'm not doing that, because I have my own. And I've said, if you want to sell your property to me, great, I'll do that, but I don't want to manage your property, because there's some conflict of interest there. There's some other things, because it is a small town, but I just know that it is hard to find. So most property managers get their money. They do a percentage, a flat fee percentage of the rent every month, whether they do anything or not. They get that every month, so it takes a chunk out of it.
Well, what I found is that a lot of the property managers have it set up that they increase their payroll by more than just the fees for the payroll. So let's just say they're paying somebody $20, and in the end it's about $5 more per hour for some taxes, and another $5 maybe your insurance. So you end up, instead of paying $30, let's say that they make you pay $40. So they've marked it up an additional $10 above cost, and that's where they get a lot of their money. But it means that it's a financial incentive for them to send out their person to your property more than is needful, because it's another way that they make money. And so I was really clear when I started property managing that I just did the straight percentage of rent because I didn't ever want there to be a reason that I would be doing the repairs, and then I just pass on the exact cost of what it cost me. And I felt like that was a really important thing to offer my owners because I hated it when I couldn't trust the property manager to be working in my interest. I wasn't ever sure. And I do that with contractors
Right.
too. Yeah, I'll do a contract where they have a set fee that they get, and then there's nothing based on the materials, because I don't ever want to have to decide between granite and quartz and wonder which percentage is going to my contractor, right? So these are the
Absolutely.
things that, yeah. So I think it's something you can look for when you're hiring people, but you can also be that when you're a property manager. You can be transparent. Yeah, I like that. I prefer that.
I much prefer when a business is built that way because the problem is when you add on, you're talking about adding on these fees, right? The
Mm-hmm.
way that business functions is they're not incentivized to find you the best deal. And so that's
Right.
a huge conflict of interest for me. So if a property manager, like you're saying, yeah, so they get their monthly set percentage fee off the
Mm-hmm.
rent, right? It's just whatever the
Yes.
rent is. If it's $1,000, they're getting, 10 or 12% or whatever. But
Right.
on top of that, yeah, you're saying all these maintenance costs or these other fees that come into play, they do an add on cost plus, they add on their fees on
Mm-hmm.
top of it. And the same thing when I have hired a contractor, I just do not like that way of doing business because they are never incentivized to find me the best deal. So that is a huge conflict of interest to me. So I love that you do that and you're an amazing property manager and there are amazing ones out there. But yeah, if you're thinking about property
Yeah.
management for others, that is a good way, because
Mm-hmm.
like we're saying, if you do a great job, it's worth that fee and every month. But to tack on all these other fees and costs, it's a way they kind of nickel and dime the landlords or landladies. And I just feel like that's very disingenuous. So I do not like that part of property managers. And that's another reason to fire them. That brings me to
Mm-hmm.
reason number 3, which is higher tenant turnover. Often with property managers, you have higher tenant turnover, which, as we know, costs you money, right? That's when you're having to turn over the unit and advertise and bring in a new one. Well, often property managers, they don't vet the tenant applicant as well as you are going to do. It might just check the boxes, but they're incentivized because often they charge a bonus or they get a fee for placing a tenant into the rental, right? And so if they can just fill the rental, they get their fee. So then they're incentivized to just fill it as quickly as possible, which, we all want to fill our rentals as quickly as possible, but we also want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and vetting them. So in my experience, we're going to be much more particular about who we are
Mm-hmm.
allowing in our rental because we know down the road, if there is fewer turnover, if there's less damage, this saves us so much time and money and headache. So they are not incentivized to take their time and making sure that it's the right tenant that's coming in. So there just tends to be higher tenant turnover when you have it managed by someone else.
Nice. Which brings us to number 4, higher maintenance costs. Absolutely. If you're not the person that is making the contracts or talking to vendors and figuring out, you might call 18 different people and make a decision, whereas they already have, either they have it in-house and so it's fixed pricing, or they've decided who they're contracting with and it might not be the cheapest. It might be, but it might not. When it's your
Right.
property, you're really careful with each dollar. And so you're a lot more careful with which vendors you hire. And so I think that's a big reason why, if you were property managing your property, you would be very careful who was doing, you would be careful their invoices too, not only who you hired, but that they billed properly. You'd be looking at the invoices and saying, oh my goodness, they double charged me, or they weren't there those days, they didn't clear snow those days. You would be aware of these things and you'd keep your costs lower because you care more.
That is so true. I can tell you how many times looking over invoices, I've said, that's not what they did, or that was not the right repair, or, just looking over because you do have a personal awareness of that property. And so then you're able to call and fix those things or argue. But if you're just sending out invoices or just paying them or, just just kind of passing the buck along, you're not taking that time to really analyze those things. And as you're saying, you're not going to be incentivized to go get quotes. There is no incentive built in for them to get 3, 4, 5 different quotes. Now, they may have companies that they've worked with that have a good reputation and they know, okay, this is the best deal and they do good work, maybe. Or it may be their cousin's wife's brother that, they jack up the price. Like, you don't know. But I'm just saying there's definitely conflict of interest there. And you better believe, like, when you have something wrong with your property, you're going to call and get a few different quotes. And there's no troubleshooting. If something's wrong with my property, we can go and look and say, hey, okay, well, have we tried this? Have we looked at that? Let's ask questions and do that. Versus a property manager often is, okay, let's just replace the whole unit and call it a day. Like, it's quick. You get the tenant to stop complaining. Their incentive is to stop the complaining, right? That's who they have to deal with. They want the tenant to be happy, which we all do, but they also just want to stop the complaining. And so they're going to just do the quickest, easiest thing for them. For the most part, I don't want to offend property managers out there that do an amazing job. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the rotten ones. But But yeah, they're not incentivized. And as we mentioned before, often they do upcharges on the maintenance bills so that they are getting a kickback. So for all of these reasons, higher maintenance costs happen when you have a property manager, and it's just how the system is designed. So when you're doing it yourself, you're going to save so much more on maintenance.
For an example, I owned a complex, I still do, so a student complex, and the taxes were extremely high. And so as an owner manager, I went in front of the county commissioners and showed them the taxes were high and brought in comps, and then there was some relief in taxes. I would not do that as a property manager for my property if I wasn't also an owner. It took a lot of time and a lot of research.
Right.
But that's kind of one of the differences between being an owner and being a manager, is that you're invested in bringing these costs down because it's each dollar is yours. It's very personal.
Absolutely. And they're not going to spend as much. They can't. I mean, they probably physically can't because they're managing hundreds of units, and they just want things solved quickly and fixed, and yeah, if they're getting a tax bill, they're just passing it on to you. They're not going to go and contest it, or an insurance bill that you get. That, I mean, they're not going to say, hey, how can we lower this? They're not going to be going to bat for you typically. So that's just something it's your investment. You are there to protect it. So you're going to be much more involved in the process. And maybe that's something that sounds awful to you. Maybe you're like, I don't ever want to think about it. I don't even want to know that I have a rental property. Well, then you get what you get. Okay. Because there needs to be. And you don't throw a fit. That's what I tell my kids. So, if you're like, hey, I'm just hands off, I don't want to ever think about it or talk about, okay, but it's an investment like any investment. And if you never checked on your investments, say in the stock market, and you just say in 10, 15 years, I'm going to look at them, see what they've done. Okay, well, it may turn out okay. It may not. You may have been able to make tweaks along the way that could have had much more valuable returns for you. So, same with your rental property. If you never think about it, never look at it, never check on it, you're going to get what you get at the end of that time period, whatever it is. And it may be good, it may not be good, but I'm on a lot of forums, and complaints of property managers seems to be a big issue. What they're charging me so much more than it's supposed to be, or what do I do about this, or how do I, handle this, or I want to see the applicants and they're saying, no, I can't look at the application. There's just so many aspects. It's your property, but they're kind of making the decisions and managing it for you, but you're not involved with it. So it could be very frustrating, I'm sure.
This list could also be used to go property managing shopping. Like, did you even know that there were upcharges on other things? I mean, as we were talking about that, and you want to hire a property manager and they say, okay, it's only 3% for your rent revenue. You have to go, where is the money coming from? Because 3% will not pay the staff costs. So then you should think, where is the money coming from? And if there's high maintenance costs, you say, hey, I'd like to just make sure I have the invoices, copy of the invoices each month of the receipts. And I just think that these are kind of the things that we're bringing up that bad managers can do. But that means that you could be wary of these 5 areas that we're talking about and make sure your property manager is towing the mark better. But we want you to be the property manager. So that's what we're talking about. Number 5, missing out on big tax breaks. If you're not managing your own rentals, then you don't have your real estate professional status. You don't have that ability to maybe write off your home office and the miles that you're using to go to your property and all of these things that you do to run your business. You could be getting those as tax write-offs, as you heard in our last podcast with the tax professional, Preston. He was amazing. But in that, we learned about all the things you could write off from your business if you're in the real estate profession. So this is a big one.
Right. It's going to be very hard for you to achieve real estate professional status for tax reasons if you're not managing your own properties. And yes, last week, take a listen to it. If you did not hear all of Preston Anderson's tax secrets and strategies, they were amazing. It was so packed with information. It was last week's, so episode 43. Take a listen to it. But yeah, he talked about all the advantages that you can have by having real estate professional status, and that's going to be huge. So if you are having a property manager, you're not able to write off a lot of these things, which are huge tax breaks for you that you're able to get being a property manager of your own properties. So that is just another thing to think about. Now, of course, your time is worth something, and a lot of people don't want the headache, and I get all of that. But if you systemize your processes, if you automate things, if you have your templates and your documents and have payments automated and really run it like a business, it does not have to take your time. It does not have to be overwhelming and just suck all of your time and energy. And that's why we have created our courses that we have. If you just want to take a nibble on some of the content that we have a few different courses on our website, landladyboss.com. If you're really wanting to do a deep dive, an intensive, that's what we just have heard. We want more, we want more, we want more. And so we are doing a 6-week intensive training where we will take you from getting your property, the very beginning, how to set up your own property management business, how to manage your properties, how to vet your tenants, how to handle the check-in, check-out things, how to have all the you get all access to all of our documents, our templates, you get lifetime access to our courses, and then we're going to go through with you doing live trainings for 6 weeks and live Q&As where you can ask all the questions you have that pertain to your properties, and we can share all the information and specialized knowledge and systems that we have learned the hard way, the long way. Yes. So this is for people that want to fast track it and completely transform their own property management business in 6 weeks. So that is starting the week of April 21st. I'll put the link in the show notes and you can save your spot today. We're going to keep it very small, very intimate, so that it can be very helpful for those that get to save a seat. So make sure you do that if you're interested. But Rachel, do you have any other things you can think of on why you should fire your property manager?
I don't know. I was just thinking actually that we could save you about 10 years of growing pains just by taking our course. I was just thinking, oh my gosh, you could just start with everything that you didn't have to learn the hard way. I mean, even when we're talking about like giving on your deposits, giving the entire amount and then giving a credit back so that they have an idea of what it costs, even those kind of things. You know why we learn these things? Because we've been burned, we've had to go to court. I mean, these are the reasons that we learn all these things that we want to share, because it's the hard way, or it's pay and have it the easy way. I guess this is where it's at, is you could just skip to the end. As far as why you'd want to fire a property manager and become that property manager, I think the main reason is just that there are few things that are as solid as an investment. I mean, we just had a really bad weekend for stocks. So few things like real estate. So you want to baby this real estate, you want it to grow, and you want it to have as little damage as possible so it lasts as long as possible, so that when you finish paying off that mortgage, you have a really good asset, not an asset that's collapsing on itself and has to now be rebuilt. And so the goal is to have your tenants pay your mortgage and not ruin your asset. And that is why you should be your own property manager.
That's so true. I can't add anything more to that. That is right there, the entire reason. So when you, in 10, 15, 20 years, go to use that asset as your retirement or whatever you're going to use that for, it's still a valuable asset and not just a heap of damage that needs a whole lot of work. You don't want that. So, yes. So I think it would be fantastic to do an episode on what to ask a property manager if you're trying to hire one or vet one. I think this brings up a lot of good points. So we could definitely plan that one, because these are all talking points, like you were saying, to ask a property manager. Well, how do you structure your pay scale? How do you handle maintenance invoices? You know, what does it look like if there's this issue, or how do you handle this if you find an applicant, or, you know, how do you vet them? These are all important things to ask someone that's going to be taking over your investments. So if nothing else, if you don't want to fire your property manager, use these points to hire a darn good one, please. That's so that your investment can keep cash flowing, keep making you money, and be protected. So thank you for what you do. We know it's a thankless job, and no one appreciates you like we do, and we understand what you're going through. So thank you. Happy renting. And remember, no one can manage your property like you can.